Morning, everyone. Welcome to From Data Chaos to Clear Decisions, How Big Powers AI-Driven Construction Insights with Slate. I'm Matt Mosley, Director of Engineering for Business Information Group, where for over 30 years, we've turned technology into results for construction firms.
Good morning, everyone. Jeffrey Nesbitt, Director of Strategic Partnerships with Slate. Looking forward to working with our great partner, Business Information Group, and friend Matt Mosley here as we talk through some industry challenges today and how Slate is evolving and solving those with AI.
Great to have you here, Jeffrey. Great to work with you. Got to point out, this is my favorite slide, I have to admit, and it's simple. But it paints a picture for those of us in the construction industry who've been here for a bit. Not that long ago, people were using and utilizing paper entry for critical business processes. Even just last year, I helped convert a customer from paper time cards into digital time card entry. But I mean, the next iteration and something that's been critical to business success for construction firms has been really digitizing information and utilizing software technologies instead of these paper entries. We're now at an interesting point in technology where AI has really become a critical and pivotal piece of technology that we can utilize and set us apart from our competition.
That's funny. You're still converting people from paper. Well, at least it's not a fax machine, right? Maybe those are all gone now.
They might still be out there. I wouldn't be surprised. But I think this is something that is near and dear to what we see in business processes still to this day. And even those who have gone to implement critical software products are still running into these issues. Disconnected teams and having, unfortunately, inconsistent data, double data entry, not one tool to really accomplish tasks that need to be done, but multiple tools and a lot of inefficiencies that are created from these systems.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Matt. When we start looking at these disconnected teams, and as we know, our clients, our contractors, they have, a diverse tech stack, right? Lots of tools they got to use. And then it's the data, right? Erroneous, incomplete sort of data in multiple tool sets. So there's always impacts in those areas, what we're seeing. And that's really where Slate's coming in is, where can we start giving time back? Where can we eliminate rework and eliminate that risk or surface that hidden risk at least, right? To be able to get in front of that. And when we look at it, it is a major problem. It's over 30 billion in the US alone, right? And they anticipate that rework is 10 to 15% of the cost that's happening on jobs. And really that's some of the areas that we'd like to focus in on and see how we can help at Slate using AI tools, across the tech stack.
Agreed. And I bet you that's what the audience is here to hear. So this is some interesting factors here, though. When we look at the cost of rework and fixing things, pretty dramatic, thinking that it's 6 times what it should cost to do some of these things.
Yeah, it keeps compounding, and like you said, it costs 6 times more. But then, when I start thinking about that, right, if we're redoing the same activity or task, another area that gets factored in, and I don't think we always realize that is job safety, right? And rework
Mm,
are cousins, or maybe it's the ugly cousin, because you're twice as more likely because we're rushing, to have that get that task or activity done. But that's what causes injuries. That's a safety factor. And if it's not bad enough, Matt, that someone's getting injured, from my consulting days, one of the things I saw is, when injuries happen and occur on a job site, the hidden cost of insurance, like, do we understand what that does? What's that impact, right? That goes up. And I think anyone who knows who has a teenage driver, once your insurance goes up, it never goes back down, it seems. So, again, just these compounding things. And then the worst part is, most of it goes unclaimed or unbilled, right? 38% of that is missing. So those things tend to lead to, the old saying, time is money. Like, where are we wasting time? And, according to McKinsey, 35% of our time, our employees' times, I should say, is spent on non-optimal activities. And so again, back to the mistakes, or rework, that could be 4 hours of your time or your PM or superintendent's time. And if there's rework, that usually means there's conflict, right? And so again, it can continually compounds, and then we're looking for data. And I think we can see quickly and understand, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, that we do spend a lot of times hunting and pecking for information, fixing mistakes, and understanding what is that impact to our organization. To me, that's the hidden truth, or the hidden area where profit fade can exist.
All great points, Jeffrey. Thank you. And this is, interesting to look at the opportunity to improve what information goes to our different roles throughout the organization. And this can impact every role within the organization in some capacity. The better the information we have in front of our teams, the better decisions that we can make, the faster we can get to good decisions, but increase really some efficiencies at all levels within the org, and some dollars and cents here and what we see. But ultimately, the goal here, and I know the audience is going to be excited to see the demo we've got coming up, but the ability to really help make good decisions by having great data from great points of analysis.
Yeah, when we look at an organization, it really is one of those unique industries, I think, where, everybody touches the job, right? The way we estimate or bid the job may not be the way we manage or build it in the field. It may not be the way we account for it in the back office, or, those types of things. But yet everybody in your organization is touching that job, Matt, to your point, at some point in time.
So
Yep.
the big question, how does big help you connect people, technology, and projects for better insights? And here's where our partnership comes into play, and just a critical thing I want to point out, and why it's so important that we have this partnership. What Business Information Group is great at doing is helping to create these connections between our technologies. We're not in the business of creating something like Slate has done, this brilliant AI product that can help the construction industry. But what we are great at doing is creating integrations between the products that are supplying that data, whether it's a project management tool, an ERP, or many other products that are out there. And that's our goal, is to help bridge those pieces for our customers and get this great opportunity here.
Yeah, appreciate that. And that's why we love partnering with organizations like you, understanding the business processes and back office procedures to help us in that. So before we jump into the product here, promise we'll be seeing the presentation here momentarily. I think it's important to set the standard or the stage for what we're going to see so we understand what we're looking at. And so when we're looking at how does Slate work, we work with all the major applications out there: Trimble, Oracle, P6, Autodesk, Procore, all those types of things. And we're pulling information, or forms and data, as we call it, out of those applications. And what we're doing is we're applying the human intent to your data. And what do I mean by the human intent? This is an important piece, is what was the intended workflow for that application or that data in project sites within Trimble, right? How did that RFI flow? How does that submittal change order work within project sites? It's more than just the data, it's the intent behind it. So we like to incorporate that. We recreate those workflows in Slate with your data, and we apply our specific construction large language model. This is something we've been working on and teaching. What is an RFI? What is a change order? How does it operate? What's its meaningful data, and how is it applied? We take that data, and then what we surface out of that is intelligent insights and lessons learned. And here's the exciting part, I think, for me, is then we continually push that information back into a Trimble project sites or a Procore or Autodesk, whatever the case may be. So it's perpetually taking your information, surfacing insights and lessons learned, and pushing it back into the application that your employees are used to using on a daily basis, right? So there's no new workflows. There's really nothing new for them to learn, but we're applying valuable data and pushing it back into your operational tool. And so what does that data look like? And what do I mean by that? When we look at things, we call them forms. Think RFIs, change orders, submittals, meeting minutes, issues, whatever those things are that I would say is standard sort of across your project management applications, we're going to pull those in. But the additional fun thing is we're also going to pull in other inputs. There's not a limit to what information we will pull in, nor should there be, right? So we want to pull in your historical jobs, maybe their specifications or contract requirements or other things that we think is important to manage in our business. Again, no limits on that. And then we apply our machine learning to that. And where our construction LLM comes in is really that auto linking and insights generation. That's where we start to tie the different data points against different data sources, like schedules, for instance. Like we look at a schedule as sort of the backbone of the nervous system in the application and apply data to that so we can see things in a timely and forecasted manner. So we'll go ahead and jump into the product here. And here we are. We have Slate's dashboard, the home opening screen if you'll once you log in. And we'll be focusing today on Slate's project intelligence. That area is we go into our insights. And one of the first areas that sort of pops up is, where are we at currently? I call this our, senior management level executive leadership type dashboard, where we just get that quick snapshot into where are we at as of today, right? And we'll see our planned and our actuals. We'll have a summary pulled up. I think that's a great thing here, sort of generated through AI. What are the problems we're seeing at the high level, causes, impacts, and then recommendations, right? So from an executive standpoint, you always have that snapshot into where we're at and where are problems surfacing. And then from there, these dashboards are yours to play with or customize, but being able to see what are my activities delayed, over the last 30 days and sliding and scaling these things back to be able to see that. Again, very high level, critical path things, top contributors, and actionable insights. And so a great way to look at things, but most people tend to jump into the buckets, and we're going to go through these buckets up here across the top. And really these buckets in this particular area is scheduling insights. So maybe I want to understand the impact of some different things that is happening. In this use case, we're pulling information from our project management tool. Again, that could be Trimble project sites, Procore, Autodesk, whatever those are, and starting to see what are the impacts based on multiple data sources. But if I want to drill down and get a little more specific, these are some of those forms that I was talking about, right? And there's no limit to how many of these bubbles do we want. It's how do we want to see the information? So for example, if I say, I want to see my scheduling risks or insights based on my submittals that are out there, then we can shorten the list and start to see, okay, what are those things and what do they look like? And here I'm looking at, okay, I have a 4-day delay to low voltage rough-in. If I want to analyze that or dig in a little deeper, you'll see I'm going to be pulling up submittals from my project management tool, project sites, Trimble's product or Procore, as I mentioned. Again, seeing what are the submittals, and I see I've got a 4-day delay here. And really, if I want to click in and understand that, well, I can see my planned start date for this activity coming out of my schedule, P6 or Microsoft Project Schedule, is on the 16th. But this activity, submittal, coming from another data source, as I mentioned, your PM tool, is showing that we're starting it, at a delay there. So we can see our activity starting on the 16th, but we have an outstanding submittal. Let's flag that. Let's understand what that looks like. If I want to see what are the tasks, the predecessors, the successors, what impact is that delay going to have? Our job at Slate is not to dictate what's important for you to action on. Our job is to surface the insights so you can apply your human intent, right? We're not pulling people, we're not pulling humans out of the life cycle of a project, but we want to empower them with some additional data points, Matt. And this is one where you can say, okay, maybe this is around an ADA doorbell. I'm not that concerned about that particular activity. I don't want to action on it. But if it is something I want to action, let's go ahead, let's share that, let's send it out, let's push it back into the data source of information for those actions and the capabilities. So that's one way to look at things. Another thing that Slate does is we like to apply metadata to other bits and pieces of information that may not be there. And in this case, we were applying some WBS activities, CSI codes, phases, areas, trade contractors, right? Our AI is intelligent enough to source the data, understand what are those areas affected, and applying additional things like maybe weather. Weather can affect, activities with high crane usage, right? Or maybe we're laying concrete and there's going to be some rain, or I'm hanging drywall and there's a lot of humidity. Like, how do we want to look at that information? But we apply that additional data and metadata. And I think when we get into some dashboards and some analytics later, you understand the perspective it gives you to uniquely take a look at things in a different way. But for today, let's focus on additional lessons learned, Matt. And this is always an area. I mean, I know you talk to a lot of contractors, a lot of clients, and lessons learned is one of those areas where people all want lessons learned, or they don't have them, or they're sort of static, if you will. I don't know if you run into that. I'm still waiting to see some, candidly, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if we look at lessons learned, what is lessons learned? Lessons learned is looking at our current activities based on our schedule and looking at it based on our historical performances on jobs in that activity level. And so we'll jump in as an example here. I've got a list, and you'll see some of these are, red, yellow. Well, we don't have much yellow, a lot of red. So we're not doing a good job, are we, Matt? You and
It's
I.
a lot of red.
Story of our life. So we can see we've got some issues here, but again, it would be color coded. And so what does it look like? On the left is the activity coming from my schedule. On the right is my lesson learned, taking a look at my historical data. And one of the things that's very interesting within lessons learned is based on one activity, you can have multiple lessons learned. It's not always just a one-to-one ratio. MEP, I think, is a great example where as you see, as I scroll down, I've got multiple lessons associated with this activity. And, some of them are low impact, Matt, and, we got some mediums, but there's some high ones here. And so being able to take a look at that. And so let's pause here and talk a little bit about what it is. Our activity is MEP penetrations. Our lesson learned is mini split units and HVAC leaks causing water damage, and it's impacting our quality and our schedule. So Slate's going to go in, be able to analyze that, tell you what the description is, if there's any building classifications, issue types, if we had links to those data sources that maybe it was coming from P6, it's coming from Procore, or whatever the case may be, and what are the preventative actions. And in this particular case, you can see we got some highlighted links here. The preventative actions, those are all AI generated and
Mhm.
based on our historical jobs. But one of the things that's really neat here is customers have the ability to add or insert their own data points. Like maybe
Mhm.
we're linking back to an SOP, or in this case, a checklist of activities where we're telling our PMs or supers, hey, in this case, did you check everything off the list to make sure before we push this data back in, let's make sure, it's meaningful, we did our jobs.
So these are actionable items that we're looking at right here. But as you're saying, we can also configure what next steps need to be to try to go out and repair, fix, or address these as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and think about this, yeah, and particularly a great use case, one we'll talk about is this, why do we want to capture lessons learned? Well, I think we all know we want to do it, but I think it's even becoming more pressing because as the experience is leaving the industry, we have junior up and coming folks that don't have all this knowledge base. So this is a great place and way for them to learn and forecast into the future. What are those potential problems? Because I don't have 30 years of experience to know that this bracket install is going to be a problem because I
Mm.
didn't have the pain of learning it, right? As we all did the old way. So a great use case is understanding of how can I use the existing information my company already has and the data we have and get smarter about it, create a center of excellence. How do we continue to learn and get better at that and teach the next folks? So when I clicked on this bracket install activity, very similar to the MEP, but I want to point out here again, the bracket install is our activity, and this is the lesson learned. So very similar to what we looked at, descriptions, preventative actions, but I want to click on this link here called view source data. And I think this should help paint the picture a little bit is what is the impact or sort
Mm.
of what are we doing in the background? On the left is that lesson learned, missing and incomplete rails, right? According to that. In the middle is the jobs where we had those activities in the past. And then on the far right is all those data points of within those jobs, where was the challenges that we had to build up what our preventative actions are, what that lessons learned. So you can see there's a lot of data points, and Slate AI does a great job of going in and pulling that historical data across all your jobs. It could be a portfolio level, or maybe it's a, hey, it's very similar to the last job we did. How we get that data is really up to our clients and how they want to look at that. But again, I think this paints a great picture for us to understand where is it coming from, and do we want to action on it? And in this case, I'm saying this is a high activity. I want to action on it. When I click it, you'll notice it popped up. In this case, a push to Procore. In Big's case, it could be push to project sites or Autodesk. Again, the platform you're using, we integrate with. And so when we want to push this over, what you'll see is well, we're pushing it back into its source data because, again, we're pulling information out of there and we're learning some lessons in this particular instance that we want someone to action on back within their PM platform. So that's where that human intent came through in that workflow. For this particular lesson learned, there's three choices. We push into observations, some meeting minutes, or some inspections, right? So again, clicking on that, automatically pushing that data over into that source application, we're actioning on it in a platform we're comfortable with, we've been utilizing, but we're enriching that application. I think that's what I love most about Slate is it's not a if us or them type of thing. It's not a rip and replace. It's really adding an agentic layer across your complete tech stack, right? So when we're consuming data from your historical jobs, from your ERPs, from your schedule, from internal documents, SOPs, whatever those things are, I think we're enriching, we're sourcing that data to provide valuable insights for you to action on. And this is a great understanding and a great way to say, hey, how do we want to interact and work with that data?
So I want to jump in there for a minute, and I might be jumping forward a little bit, but I think it's an important takeaway and point for the purpose behind this and sharing this with our audience and teams. Um, why Slate? Why this product? And a lot of people are either dabbling in AI, curious about AI, or trying to utilize it today. And one of the biggest considerations there is having something that's purpose built for what we're trying to get out of it. And that's the value add. That's what we see and why we're so excited about this product. We can have something and utilize something that's purpose built to help deliver good intelligence, good information, where other generic products just don't have the insight or capabilities that we're looking for.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because we're very proud of the fact that we are construction specific. There's a lot of tools out there, and I think there's some great value in them. But at the end of the day, they're just working around some workflows and early automation stuff, which I think is important. But it's almost like a construction wrapper on ChatGTP, Gemini, Copilot, those types of things,
Hmm.
where we've built from the ground up and taught it what is an RFI, how should it interact, how does change orders, potential change orders impact, job cost and financials and whips and things like that, right? Uh, I would say it's the next layer down from what people are doing out there, and using your data to do that. So once we have our scheduled insights and lessons learned and some of that metadata that we talked about, we want to look at it in a meaningful way. So if we click on, into some dashboards, some analytics, some slicing and dicing, you know, it's important to be able to see what we can do. So here, I'm looking at a scheduled impact, dashboard, a sample, telling me what hours are at risk, what activities are at risks. We want to narrow it down because that's a big number. It's almost undigestible. So hey, just show me my critical stuff. Okay, so I got 80 hours at risk over the next 3 months, and across 12 activities, and being able to see that. You can clear the filter out, slice and dice it anyway. But again, looking at where are we at our plan, start versus float. Maybe I've got this activity up here around elevators, it's further out, lots of float, I'm not worried. Let's drill down, let's get more specific on this one that's starting shortly, and I'm at negative float. Again, different ways to see the information and consume it. When I want to look at some lessons learned, like how many lessons learned are on this job and how many forms or where did it come from? You know, again, applying that metadata in this particular case, like CSI divisions, like I want to see across CSI divisions, where are all those lessons learned? And no surprise, our poor folks in MEP, they've got a tough job to do, lots of runs and activities. So that's a little higher. Again, applying metadata in the background to your existing data is a great way for you to understand where you're at in a job, like this lessons learned heat map, for example. When I look at this, we've applied root causes. Again, that metadata. What was the root cause based on that CSI code? Maybe I don't have a big team. I don't have a big staff. I want to know where are the areas I want to focus. Again, going over here, we got the plumbing issues and those leaks. I want to see those things. Like that's where I should be concentrating my effort and time, right? Again, looking at it in different ways. Some folks like to look at it by lessons learned versus form counts, bubble charts. How many lessons did I have? 3, but it came from 207 forms as opposed to, you know, here's, 51 across 10 forms. So again, how do I want to see that information and look at it in a meaningful way? Maybe you want to look at change risk, right? Intelligence. What are my direct costs? What's my total financial exposure? A thing I like to see is hey, where are my top risk codes? Based on those CSI codes, where do I want to focus my energy and efforts? And again, when you have an application like Slate that layers across your tech stack, you can get this types of insights, quickly and easily because we're consuming the data and linking it with our AI auto linking, as I mentioned in the beginning. So again, AI is coming in and telling us what our project risks are, at what level, what's the breakdown. I'm seeing a lot here, by trades on my site preparation, for example. I've got 7 highs, 4 mediums. Maybe I want to be focusing in those areas. And so, if we click down, we can start to see at the, parental level, site preparation. I look down at the subordinates or the children activities, like what are those conditions? Where's the dollars being spent? And you can click on these again, and we're going to source what the challenges are and give you some preventative actions. Again, AI generated preventative actions based on our jobs. Very similar to lessons learned, that we're also applying that here. Like, what were those unforeseen things across these, 5 jobs in this case, and what were those things again? Again, you can start to see how when we apply, construction specific AI, looking at your existing data, tying it to your current tools, and being able to come up with some preventative actions for you to mitigate risk, right? The idea is to surface risks before it happens, right? So we can make business decisions prior. And we do that one of 2 ways. When you're implementing Slate, we're automatically going to start looking at where are we at currently with these activities, these jobs. Where's our 2, 4, 6, 8-week look aheads, right? I call those the in-flight type things and in-flight insights and lessons learned. But more importantly is how about on the front end when we're putting bids and estimates together? We're going to use lessons learned there. We're seeing our estimating teams, our design teams start to utilize Slate to say, hey, this is very similar to the past jobs we've done. Where were the gotchas? How often are the gotchas happening, and what can we do to build into this bid or estimate to prevent that from happening, right? To limit our exposure as much as we can. I don't know if there's such thing as 100% limitation, but the truth is lessons learned should be a shrinking database, not a growing database, right? As we continually utilize the tool, we should be getting better and better at what we're doing.
So some questions for you, maybe some challenging questions here for you, Jeffrey, but you and I go way back, right? So probably okay. I can throw some questions at you, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. So, I mean, from a customer standpoint, like how can we trust some of these results? I think that's one of the questions just with AI in general. How do we know that we're looking at real information here?
That's a great question. And so, one of the areas that is hopefully to give you that confidence is we put the source in there, right? There's no hidden secret. Where's the information coming from? It's coming from these jobs. It's coming from these activities. And so that gives me some confidence and validity to say, oh yeah, hey, I remember that job. Yep, that was a what type of show. And these things did happen, right? And so hopefully it jars our memory a little bit. But I think another way to understand that is this insights mind map. And to illustrate to your point, Matt, of like, how do I know where this is coming from? What is it we're doing in Slate? When we look at everything, this is all the activities that are happening on your job, right? This is what we're linking in the background. Those schedules, those Trimble projects, those
Hmm.
drawings from Autodesk or Autodesk Construction Cloud, data points, whatever that is, we're linking. And up here, you can see where's it coming from? Lessons learned, Procore issues. Some of it could be coming from internal information. So again, showing you where it's coming from. If we zoom out, this really is this is our jobs, and that's what's scary about what we do, I think, as well as what's exciting is this information is all out there. This is all living in real time. So as you update a schedule, as a new change order comes in, maybe it's a new subcontract purchase order, whatever. Again, this becomes that living and breathing data environment.
Awesome. Yeah, it's pretty staggering, just the intelligence behind that. And then another question for you. The the output here. Well, two things actually. I'll throw at you. One, what is the investment of time that the customer would have to help generate some of these reports? Like, what do they need to know that they need to provide so they can get good reporting?
That's a great question, because one of the things we always hear is we love this, but our data is a mess. And I would
Yeah,
agree. Yep,
yeah.
you should love this. And two, yeah, your data is a mess. So what do we do now? Three is that's what I love about what we built is the construction intelligence layer that we built into Slate AI allows us to quickly turn that data chaos into clarity. And what do I mean by that? If we implement Slate, we're looking at roughly 30 on the fast end, 45 on the back end. So you're anywhere around 40, 45 days, I think is a realistic implementation. The beautiful thing about our intelligence is we're not teaching it anything. It knows what an RFI is. It knows what a change order is. It knows how it applies to your schedule and what activities it correlates to. And so one of the cool things is when we do our first pass, right? This is before go live. It's just we're plugging into your instance of Trimble project sites. We're plugging into your schedule. We're plugging into your SOPs or your historical jobs. Pulling that out of your PM tool or your ERPs with job cost. That first pass, we're hitting about 80%. It's accurate. 80% out of the gates. The data is factual and usable. And then that's where big comes in. Using best practices, their understanding of the industry, working with their clients and knowing their business processes and their data sets. That's the last mile. That last 15 to 20% is where big and a subject matter expert from the client work together in conjunction with Slate to make sure we tie in the last few things. And I say that 15 to 20% because people are importing data out of Excel, individual SharePoint drives. Email is another one, right? And so it's just setting those rules up of how we want to interact with that data. That's that last mile for what I would call is client specific needs. And so again, from a timing perspective, that would fluctuate, but not significantly from our experience so far.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey.
So that's really is Slate Technologies product intelligence. Um, engine and what we're surfacing and sourcing out of our application, I think we can maybe pause here and see if we, apologies here. I want to put this up here while we go through any Q&A that we potentially might have. And so you know how you can reach myself, but more importantly, our partner, Big, and Matt and his team for any additional questions, seeing what this looks like in your environment, sort of going into a deeper dive or a deeper level with the business information group team.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Great demo. Yeah, anybody out there in the audience, feel free, throw a question out there. We're happy to answer and follow up with you if need be.
Doesn't look like we got too many questions coming in. Again, one around the data. I think we talked a little bit to that, Matt, and working with your data. That's the fun thing. Quickly spinning up your information in 45 days, I think is really valuable. We're seeing people generate 1 or 2 lessons learned on a first pass that candidly the ROI is significantly high. And so that's what's exciting is, on first pass is being able to see impactful things. You and I, Matt, we came from, I came and from the ERP world, you're still obviously very deep in that. And so, we know how tough ERP implementations are. And so, I feel very fortunate to be on this side of the house where we can spin up things quickly and it's not a 12 to 18 month cycle. So enjoy that.
Agreed. Yeah, and that's excellent points and something that we do deal with regularly with customers. We had a fantastic question come in from Michelle. Can you speak to data security?
Yeah, and that's a great. So people are always worried about data security. So again, this is, within your own environment. This is not information that's shared with other organization. It's your data set. So we can send out a follow-up document to speak to all the technical aspects, but everyone's data is completely secured. We're SOC compliant, all the certifications that you need for data security. We have done those, and we've got 52 patents granted or in process around our construction AI as well and what we're doing. So it's a fully secure environment. We do not share information, and our clients are not learning off of other people's data either. I think that's important to understand. People get worried about machine learning. Are you learning off of my data? And as I mentioned, we've done the learning. We're just maximizing and tweaking it for your organization individually.
Excellent. Hopefully that answered the question for you, Michelle. It's an excellent question. Appreciate you asking. I'm going to actually pile on to that question just a little bit with what is the customer expectation for any or hardware or software requirement? What do they need to provide that Slate would live on, so to speak?
Yeah, so there's no hardware or requirements or anything like that. We're a subscription based. You see, we're in a browser. We're going through AWS. So, and when you come aboard and get a subscription, you get enormous amount of data capabilities. We haven't had anyone run over yet. So, looking forward to the challenge of when someone does.
Appreciate that. Thank you. We have an anonymous attendee asked a question. Great question. How many active subscriptions do you currently have?
We'd be happy to talk about how many companies we're working with, but being a privately held company, we do not share that type of financial information of that.
Appreciate that. Maybe I'll have a pile-on question for that one. How long has Slate AI been around?
Well, you must have read Tracy's mind because she just fired off the same question.
Beat you
So
to it, Tracy.
apparently, great minds think alike, Tracy. So Slate AI, if we have been around, we've been working on the back end, if you will, the construction intelligence and building that for the last 2.5 years. And really, we've gone to market in the last 18 months. So as you can imagine, we are an AI company. So If I told you we've been around for 15 years, we'd call BS on that. So
Yeah.
yes, we are a relatively new company. We were working in stealth and building the construction intelligence large language model from the ground up, which took time. And so yeah, we've been in market for about 18 months now.
Yeah, yeah. Considering AI really in the public market hasn't been around all that long. I mean, really, it's the last 3 years that the entire industry has ballooned, and so rapidly that it's ballooned to where it is today. But one of the critical things that we keep running into is there's a lot of great uses for AI, but you'll find generic tools often give you generic results, and some good, some bad, and some in the middle there, but something that is purpose built, that's where we're finding the most benefit.
Yeah, and that's when, I showed you that sort of cluster, that moving interactive insights. That's what we were working on and building over the last 2.5 years, is that
Hmm.
intelligent layer to say, how do we handle information between multiple platforms? Because that's really the challenge that contractors have today. Within each I wouldn't say within each platform, but it's trending and probably will be this way, is everyone's going to have their own AI tool for their application, right? And so if you're using project sites or Procore, like everyone's got an AI initiative because that's the direction we're going, right? There will be AI. It's not if, it's not when, it's actually happening now. So like you can trending in that direction, or you're going to get left behind. Unfortunately, it is gotten to that level. So the challenge though with those AI tools in each platform is that I see is they're fantastic. Like you should utilize those tools within that platform, right? Because it can make you more efficient in certain tasks and activities that you're doing. But what I love about Slate is taking all those platforms, tying it together and giving you some insights and lessons learned and mitigating risk and profit fade that doesn't exist today in the market, right? So yes, there's benefits within each tool's application. I do believe that, but my company doesn't run in one tool, Matt. I don't know about you. And so being able to tie those things together is where the power, I think, of information goes to that next step.
Agreed. All right. Anybody else with questions out there? So far, we've had some great ones come through. Don't want to miss any opportunities here. But of course, you have our information for any follow-ups.
So, yep, I'd like to thank you, Matt, for having me on to share what we're doing together, our organizations, and what we're bringing to market. I think it's exciting. If anyone's got any follow-up questions, you're more happy to reach out to me. But more importantly, Matt and his team will be happy to coordinate things with us and help you take you on your AI journey and see how we can help eliminate profit fade, rework, lower costs, and surface insights, make better decisions.
Love it, Jeffrey. As always, great to work with you, sir. And appreciate everybody showing up for the webinar and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.